Welcome to Sports BC Drag Racing. I'm Jared McLean and I'm joined here with 6-time National Door Slammer champion Victor Bray and 4 times National Top Fuel Dragster champion Darren Morgan. Guys, we're back for show 2 and we are on to something really cool. We've just come off the back of the Gulf Western Oil Nitro Thunder event at Sydney Dragway. Let's get your take on it. Victor, what were some of the things happening in Slammer?
Well, I think when we first got there, I mean, the track went out of their way to make the racing conditions the best they could. They ground the track flat. These tracks develop a few bumps over time. You got 10,000 horsepower dragsters and stuff going down there all the time, and 3,000 horsepower door slammers. They ground it nice and flat, and obviously we need a lot of preparation needs to go into these racetracks prior to the event to get a surface of rubber. Struggled a little bit with the time frame that they had there on the Friday. A lot of the door slammers really had a bit of trouble getting down the track. The rubber was starting to build up, it wasn't quite there. And our good old mate John Zappi was the only one that went down there super fast and reset a world record on it. So congratulations on that, Johnny. But it's a lot of a struggle on there. I did really well on there, so did Benny. We did good for what we had at the track on the day, and so did a couple of other teams. But it was a little bit looser than what we liked. Come fantastic the next day. It wouldn't have been great the next day if it wasn't like that the first day. So in the door slammers, a lot of PBs on the weekend, and that's contributed to the track. All the different types of cars like a different type of racing surface, and the air was great, so everyone had plenty of horsepower. But the door slammer guys, we like to have a little bit of a loose start line, but not one that lets the tyres smoke off the line, but one that lets the tyres get a bit of tyre speed. And then out when the tyres are grabbing the track out at about 100 foot, we like the track to have a lot of traction there. That track was exactly perfect drag racing door slammer stuff on the weekend. I don't know how these guys liked it, mate, but I think there was 7 teams out of the 11 teams that ran PBs on the weekend, and consistently good PBs, you know.
It was an incredible event for racing. Darren, give us your take on it. How did the AEG Power Tools Dragster perform over the weekend?
Well, it didn't look as good as what it really was. We run personal best to half track early in the testing and stuff. We broke a throttle cable, so that didn't look good, but the incrementals to half were to run what we did in the last pass, like in the final we ran a 456. The other cars running way slower, so we wish we got in the final to spank them a bit, but life goes on.
Well, we of course touched on PBs. I think one of the standout ones, John Zappia from WA, 563 at 252 mile per hour. That's incredible. Like we say, that's a national record here. But looking to yourself, Victor, a 586 at 248. It's a stonking PB. What happened?
Yeah, we had some new stuff, and we're just touching on John's 563. I mean, the door slammer guys always expect something pretty good out of John, and we thought he'd go down there. The track was a bit average. We thought, we're betting in the stage and lanes there, maybe a 75 and 80 or something like that, when none of us could get down there. Went into 63, we couldn't talk for about 15 minutes. So, but anyway,
I think anybody from WA in that crowd was just ecstatic at that time.
Absolutely.
They thought, yep, we've got this event. It's the first time he's come out in this series for this season, and we were ready to go home with the trophy at that stage.
It's a big time for the team, and he backed it up the next day too, so good on him. But we come out with some new gear on board. We've been waiting for some new converter drives. John and a lot of other teams run clutches. We've decided to go the route of the torque converter, which is some technology that's getting developed throughout the door slammer racing in the world. Some guys have got it down pat, and we thought we've been trying a few different brands, a few different types, a few different setups. We've sort of locked in one that we like. It's a B&J Quick Drive, and we put them in the cars. They finally turned up. Took a little bit of time to get them here because stuff out of the US is slow. And we went down there expecting or hoping to be able to duplicate as fast as the cars have been going. So I would have hoped for about a 595. Ben would have hoped for probably a 583, 82, something like that. To come away with a 570 in Ben's car and a 586 in my car was just fabulous, and gave us some real strong base now to head to the Winter Nationals. A little bit of testing beforehand, and we just want to try and capitalise on that. And the tracks might not be as suitable when we get to the Winter Nationals because Willowbank is a very tight racetrack on the start line. These guys love it. Door slammers need a complete different setup to get down there fast.
Darren Morgan, the dragster performing an incredible number, a new PB, 450 at 329 mile per hour. What building blocks were put into place to achieve that?
Well, it's a new car. It's been going faster and faster and faster, and before this meeting we had a few niggling issues in the bearing department, in the conrod bearing, so we didn't want to stand all over it. So we tidied that up before we got to the event. If we knew about the testing on the Friday and we could have done that, well, we could have come out on that day and run that number way earlier. The broken throttle cables are the thing that tested us out the most because, of course, it quit half track, but that tune-up never changed all weekend, so we could have, all day actually. It could have been there earlier for us and we could have stepped it up a little more in the final, but that's life and drag racing, and that's why it's so cutthroat. It's cool as.
It absolutely is, right down to the wire. We're going to have Rusty Gregory from Sydney Dragway join us in just a second, so let's get talking to about racing in a really serious manner. We touched on John Zappia, new PB, new national record. It was his first time out for the 400 Thunder Series this season. He came out, looked pretty good, but unfortunately wasn't able to really capitalise. We saw the fastest slammer pass in Australian history.
Yeah.
When that went down, Victor, how did that make you feel?
It was good. I mean, Ben ran a 75 earlier in the day, and I thought to myself that was a pretty good run for us guys sitting out there with some new stuff, and not a guess, but a calculated guess in the converter setup and the gear ratio set up in the car, and Benny on the 4-link and the way that he sets the timing and the fuel in the car up. So when I saw the 700 come up, I mean, I was just looking up at Ben's lane, I saw the 700 come up, saw the 65 in John's lane. All of a sudden I realised the wind light was on in Ben's lane, so you know, that was great. I mean, you know, it is really solid, and Ben puts a big effort into that car, into what he wants to do and how he wants to set it up, and we do a little bit of testing, probably not as much as we'd like to do, but yeah, it was just great to see it go down the track. And mate, any time you get one in on John Zappia, you gotta love it, mate. He's the toughest racer the sport's ever seen indoor slam. He's going to the United States soon, so he may be the toughest racer in the world. We don't know yet.
Oh, awesome.
So obviously that was one of the highlights. Any particular lowlights from the Gulf Western Oil camp over the course of the Nitro Thunder weekend?
Not in our place there wasn't, I don't think. I mean, there's a couple of the guys, one of the door slammer guys busted a diff, couldn't get him off the track for half an hour. That's a disgrace when that sort of thing happens. Not to him or anyone, it's just a shame that the parts don't last that long.
Yep.
But in my car, we actually, because we're on such new stuff, me and Ben, we stuffed a bit of a setup up in the converter. I think these are lock-up converters, so they have a clutch plate set up inside them, and we didn't quite have it adjusted right on the 586. It slipped and burned a little bit out of it, and the 592, the next one's a bit slower. Going into the final against Gary Phillips, I mean, I knew and Ben knew, and a couple of the crew guys knew that we weren't going anywhere. But you don't tell them that. I mean, you know, Gary's an absolute professional. Talk about someone stepping up, and Gary used to tell me he had no idea how to go any faster than like a 580 in that door slammer of his, in his Lucas door slammer. But on the weekend he went 575 and 572 in the final. So probably wasn't going to catch him anyway. But yeah, we knew when we went out there and staged the car that as soon as we put our foot in the throttle that was going to do some slipping. So it was a shame, but we tried to fix it and we just didn't have time to get in there at the time. So that was probably a low light for me. I would like to give Gary a good race in the final. We call it the race of the old blokes. Me and Gary, the oldest fellas racing at the moment. So it's great for us both to go to the final, and all the young blokes sitting back in the pits on their telephones.
Making sure they're getting all those all important likes on their Instagram posts. Top Fuel, let's step it up and go right to the edge. The Lamatinas brought a new car in with your old teammate Richie Crampton.
Yep.
How did you feel coming into this event knowing that he was going to be just a pit bay or two down from you, competing in the same event?
Mate, it means nothing. Those guys can buy and sell us 30 times. So it's we're just the little boys from the bush swinging as hard as we can, and we're doing good. Like, there's so many cars out there running 450s now, it's amazing, and we just got to step it up a little more. I don't know if I take a lot of notice what everybody else is doing. We want to hold the bar. So I guess if you're trying to go quicker than what they can fluke a pass every now and again, you're going to smoke the tyres every pass. So we just need to, we said we're going to have a consistent 50s car, and that's what we're aiming at. We've run, you know, like a mid 50 now, so we'll try and step that up to go faster, of course, but we're only going to run that we know we can get to the other end when conditions allow it. And as Victor said, the track out there done an outstanding job of that track. It was really good, and tested them. You know, it was down to the wire, and the cars come out and all ran really good, and it must have been awesome for the spectators to see so many 450 passes and the door slammers running as quick as they're ever gone. The sport's absolutely amazing and rocking the house.
It was absolutely incredible to see the performances from not just yourself but across the door slammer field. Sainty was one of the only ones that really had an issue getting that car down there, so you know that the track had everything just aligned. Touching back on Lamatinas, we saw Kelly Betts lurking and soaking in as much knowledge as she could. How do you guys rate Kelly coming into as she steps into the seat for the Nitro Up North event?
Well, Kelly's come out of door slammer racing, obviously. She races sports compact cars, and she's always been very, very good at it. She comes from a drag racing family, so, you know, they've lived around. She was bought, I remember when she was just a baby, believe it or not, and her and her brother, and they were just, you know, Steve Betts has been around drag. He's managed racetracks all over the country, and You know, they've been around racing forever, and the car that she races now, I mean, not knocking these boys here, but the car that she races now would be a hell of a lot more of a handful than a well-tuned, fast-running top-field dragster. I think you'd agree with that. The car she runs now is a sports compact car, short wheelbase, big horsepower, I think.
Light.
Very, very hard to drive, and she drives that and she does it fine. So, you know, we're all hoping that she does well when she gets in the fuel car, and see how we go.
It's good to have a woman in the class too. It brings a bit more pizzazz to that class.
Now, I want to hear from you with regards to this topic. Rochelle Splatt looking to make a return to the sport with Gulf Western Oil backing. Did you see that coming 2 years ago, 3 years ago?
Rochelle coming back? Not at all. No, it didn't even enter the radar, but it's awesome that she's back. Same thing, just brings more finesse to the sport. Two ladies coming into the class, it just swings the cameras around to that deal. It's got to be better for it. The more of that we can have, the better. You're saying about Richie racing out there, so I outreacted the American. Just remember that.
Yeah, right. Well, that one will be written into the history books. Everyone make sure they remember that one. Of course, the two ladies are going to be joining the ranks of competitors that are going to be out for your scalp. I'd have to say your main competitor at the moment, and he is leading the championship, Wayne Newby. Now, going into the Winter Nationals, it's a slim to nothing chance that you'll be able to wrestle that championship away from him. You're looking at testing in Queensland. Is that something that you'd like to be doing, or would you really like to be duking it out for that top honour?
Mate, it is what it is. Every day's a new day. So, of course, we want to win every single pass, and I only ever look at one pass at a time. If we can win that one, we'll move on to the next one. That's what it's all about. I look forward to the day we can actually test.
Yeah.
That'd be an awesome thing.
Mathematical impossibilities. If there's a possibility there, it's happened in drag racing over. That's an unpredictability of drag racing. If it can happen, it has happened, and it can happen.
Yep.
We're going to say, Victor, your main competitor, it's the battle of the Titans that has gone back for decades. Yourself and John Zappia.
Yep.
You've had some new performance. You've taken it right to the edge with him. How do you look at that battle, that fight going on into the future?
Oh, clearly John's had an advantage over us for the last few years, you know. But I mean, it's time that we sort of got into it, I think, a bit and get stepped up. We've tried a few different avenues to try and catch him. He's very smart in the clutch area, great driver. You know, got a really strong team behind him. He had, you know, when he was there with the Striker boys, you know, he had some good advantages there financially and stuff, which he really capitalised on. You know, John's been a smart racer from day one. You know, when back in the day when Ravenswood was open down before they opened the Motorplex, he was smart down there. You know, he's always been a driver. We used to laugh because he used to bounce off most walls and go down the track and still beat us the bugger. But no, and I think, you know, once he gets onto something, he's a bit of a G. He's got a bit of a hell of a memory. Like, got a photographic memory, and he can remember anything that's ever happened with the car. Unlike a lot of people, including myself. And you know, he's just like that. You know, he sits there and he's just like a little scientist that gets all the stuff going, as well as a driver and a tuner, and he's a good team owner, and that, and has some really good loyal guys that have been around him for a long, long time. That all helps on race day, you know. And once as he's lowered his ET, you see that he's lowered them further and further and further. Now, saying that, we believe that he's beatable. We've beat him a few times. 2000 and when his sixth championship, we beat him 3 or 4 times that year when we really put a bit of effort in. And you know, we're not beating him yet because we know that racetrack gave us a bit of an advantage down there on the weekend, a couple of weekends ago at the Nitro Champs. But you know, we want to just capitalise on where we are in relationship to him now. I mean, we're still a few hundredths of a second off him, but a few hundredths of a second in drag racing is like losing Bathurst by 5 laps. So we'll wait and see where we go with it. But we'll be working very, very hard to catch him, and you know, it'd be a great thing, and if we could just get back near him again.
Well, we're now going to be joined by one of the busiest men on race day, Rusty Gregory, Sydney Dragways Media and Partnerships Manager and commentator. He's a man of many talents. We'll catch him in just a second. Welcome back to Sports BC Drag Racing. My name's Jared McLean, and I am joined by Rusty Gregory. He's right here in between these two thoughts. Victor Bray on the end from Slammer, and Darren Morgan, 4 times national top fuel champion. Rusty Gregory, you are one of the busiest, if not the busiest guy on the day. Of course, you are the media and partnerships manager at Sydney Dragway, but you're also one of the commentators. How do you find the time, mate?
I've managed to fit 30 hours into 24 hours of the day, basically. There's not really any easy way to explain it other than you've just got to get it done. Of course, I do a lot of the start line reporting on race day, which involves interviewing all the crew chiefs and interviewing some of the drivers. But in addition to that, there's things behind the scenes, coordinating autograph sessions, working with the existing sponsors that we've got in the series and at the track as well. And basically just trying to make it all work. And if it looks seamless from the outside, then obviously I'm doing my job pretty well.
Well, things were absolutely entertaining over the course of the weekend. Let's talk about Pro Slammer. The Gulf Western Oils Nitro Thunder was a great event. What's your highlights?
Oh, look, I don't think you can go past that run between Benny and Zap with that 565 to the 570. Fastest side-by-side pass we've ever had in this country. The 563 from Zap earlier on. But to be honest with you, the highlight for mine was seeing the two old blokes in the final round going against it, Victor and Gary Phillips. And, to see those guys as a kid, I watched those guys growing up, so to see them back in the final round, it was just fantastic.
It's good being there too, mate, I tell you. Good feeling being there. Talked to Gary about it before the run. So.
And with highlights, obviously there's lowlights. Run me through some of the stuff that could have gone better in
Oh,
Slammer.
look, there was all sorts of things throughout the day. Unfortunately, we had a couple of downtimes throughout the day. That comes with drag racing. You're always going to have incidents here and there. We did have one sportsman competitor unfortunately have a bit of an accident on a motorcycle, and he will be back fighting fit eventually. But as far as Pro Slammer goes, I don't know that you could pick out too many lowlights. As Victor said earlier on in the show, I think it was 7 out of the 11 guys that were there were running PBs. So it's pretty hard to pick a low light out of that.
Moving to Top Fuel, give us your rundown.
Oh, look, the 453 by Richie Crampton was absolutely sensational. To see those guys, when the car only landed in the country about 2 days before the race meeting, they got it up to Sydney, got the thing sorted and ready to go, and to see them come out and run the kind of times that they did was absolutely sensational. The 456 in the third round of racing from this guy as well was pretty special, and I tell you, the reaction from his crew on the start line was absolutely sensational. You just can't buy those kind of experiences.
Incredible stuff. Now, 400 Thunder and IHRA, you guys have run a round-robin format at the Nitro Thunder event. Was it a success or was it a failure?
Absolutely a success. It's not the first time that we've done it. Roughly the 50-50 split between your traditional eliminations and the all-run format now. And the great thing about it is it's not necessarily about trying to level out the playing field and artificially create a points chase. What it's about is putting these guys in front of the crowd more often, giving them more exposure for their sponsors, giving the crowd more racing for their money, and giving the drivers more time on track. In reality, it's a win-win for everybody.
Now, we know, Darren, that it's not just about the on-track stuff, but obviously in this situation, did you take those extra passes, that all-run format, as a bit of a win for yourself to be able to get out there in front of the crowd a bit more often?
I was all against it because I'm a traditional drag racer. I'm all about qualifying and sending somebody home the next day. And young Benny was instrumental in getting that format put together. That works for us. And as far as growing our sport and making our sport better, it is definitely the deal. The crowd loves it. Our sponsors that are there love it. The corporates we had there love it. So it is definitely a better format for some of the racing. And you can see the crowd there right at the end. When we used to go, 8, 4, 2 in the final, like they're hanging around for 2 cars to go, or 1 pass. Now they're hanging around for 3 passes.
It was a situation there where the course of eliminations, it spearheaded, yes, towards a culmination, but the bang for your buck almost wasn't there, and that's where these kinds of formats really work fantastically as a punter on the hill.
Yep.
There's been a lot of new in the 400 Thunder series, of course, new sponsors with Gulf Western Oil jumping on board, not just for Nitro Thunder, but also in Queensland for the upcoming Winter Nationals. OVO Streaming, the AEG Arab Power. Let's go back. Let's talk about the Gulf Western deal, because it's come at a fantastic time, Rusty. How good is it to have that kind of backing?
Well, the great thing about it is that Gulf Western is a company that really wants to work with the sport and work with 400 Thunder and all the tracks to actually make it work. It's not about just handing over a check and saying, there's the money, go do what you do. They actually want to work with us, work with the racers, and I think it was evidenced on the weekend. Victor had over 1,000 guests from Gulf Western Oils in his pit area. which is sensational. It's exposing people to the sport. That's what it's all about. AEG Power Tools, exactly the same thing with the Hour of Power. You know, it's about putting these companies and putting new faces into the sport and putting the sport in front of new people. And you know, the OVO deal as well, the live streaming, it's probably the best quality live stream that we've ever seen from drag racing in this country. So all these things, all these elements are all starting to come together, and you know, it only bodes well for the future.
Let's talk about the success of the competition. Series running at 3 tracks. Jaron, we want to see Top Fuel racing. How do we get a full field of Top Fuel dragsters at every event? What do we have to do?
Find a bucket full of money. It's so expensive to run these cars now. So it's very hard for those people to ship them around the country and run at all the events, and it is getting better. There's 3 more new cars coming, or 2 more. Other than Lamentina's just turned up, there's 2 more on the way to this country. So the class is getting stronger and stronger and stronger. So I don't think it's not. So it'll take a little while to build, but what 400 Thunder's done in the events they're doing and keeping it close and closer to the capital cities and all those things is definitely making the class stronger. So I think it needs to be run the same as that for a few years longer. And last time we won a championship, it was 11 rounds or 12. It's unaffordable in this country to run that many rounds of Top Fuel. So now that we've got it closed up a little more and it's 6 rounds at the moment, I think that's what we have to do for a little while longer for people to grab their feet. Like Rochelle's coming back, and young Betsy's coming in to drive a car. Like there's things building all the time, so I don't think it's getting smaller. It's definitely getting bigger.
Victor's drivers, they need the recognition. You can go out and you can win, but you've got to have the backing, not just from your own sponsors, but from promoters, from tracks, everything else, to really maximise on a win. What do drivers need to do outside of the racing to make sure that they get all these people on board to put together a good program?
Yeah, we got the variety of people that are involved in drag races, especially Group 1 drag races, is amazing. We got lawyers, we got doctors, we got accountants, we got mechanics, we got guys that have been, a lot of guys fund themselves. Some guys are self-funded, and other guys have to work hard to get the sponsorship. And I remember John Force years ago and Gary Densham. Gary Densham was a school teacher, and Gary Densham said, I'm going to go out, I'm going to start working a little bit harder to try to get a few more dollars together to go drag racing. And John Force said, I'm not going to go get a sponsor. And you see where it all ends up. So I mean, the guys themselves, there's a great story behind all the drivers in drag racing. There's fantastic people in there. There's stories in there that the general public would be very, very excited to see. And I think the Sports BC show is going to show some of that behind the scenes stuff and show what's going on in people's lives outside. I mean, I'm a tomato farmer, I'm out there racing a doctor, a lawyer, an accountant, you know what I mean? Racing, it's just a great time and a great thing. And everyone has their own aspect that they look at drag racing at, where they came from, what they're doing. I mean, you've got guys like Peter Kapiris, Robin Judd, these guys, right? One day they decided to want to go drag racing. They were into cars and stuff, never sat in race cars. Put a great team together because they're good managers. They do that every day of the week in their business. They come out to the sport, right? And the first thing they do is jump in a 3,000 or 4,000 horsepower door slammer and go racing. Now these things are absolute animals. Guys like me and Gary Phillips, a lot of other people, we started and John Zapp, we started at the bottom and sort of worked our way up faster and faster cars. And it's I suppose it's a movement to get more and more used to the cars. But these guys that jump straight in, I take my hat off to them, mate. I just don't know how hard that would be. I mean, these fuel guys, that's exactly what they do. They jump in a top fuel car. Like Kelly Betts is going to get into a top fuel car out of a 7-second door slam. I mean, it's crazy. But the stories behind the different, the private lives of a lot of the races, or all the races, there's some fantastic stories there, and I just think it's going to be great to present some of them to the public in the future, and that's where the recognition would come from, just better reporting of what we already have.
Yeah.
Now, Rusty, this is very much a family sport. We've got children coming with the family. By 9 p.m, we kind of want to be on the way home, if not already home. What does it take to keep an event on schedule at a meeting?
It takes a lot of things. It takes basically nothing to go wrong throughout the day. We do build buffers into the program, because obviously when you're pushing cars to their limit, you've got 10,000 horsepower top fuel dragsters going down the racetrack. Things are going to go wrong every now and then. But what we need to do is get those things cleaned up as quickly as we can. look at the scheduling to make sure that the scheduling works for both the crowd and the races. That's not necessarily the easiest thing in the world to do. And we need to make sure that we do have the families ready to go home, roughly by 9 o'clock. For example, the event, the Gulf Western All Nitro Thunder, the planned finish was 8 o'clock on a Saturday night. And if we can do that every single time, it becomes family friendly, and you start getting more and more people telling more people about it and getting more people out to the racetrack.
I mean, we talk a lot about trying to build these buffers in, so that's a managerial sort of aspect. Let's look at it from an administration sort of point of view. You got some great backers. Trying to build on that, what's it going to take from these guys to really take the sport to the next level and help to develop that short, sharp family show that everyone can enjoy?
Yeah, look, it's one of those things. It's always going to take a little bit of time to develop, and it's going to take not necessarily money, but it's just going to take a lot of brainstorming and a lot of putting our heads together with not just the administration of the sport, but also the racers, the guys who are out there doing it, and making sure that what we're doing is working for them. Because if it works for them, the racers and the crew are going to make less mistakes. If they make less mistakes, it means less stuff goes down on the racetrack, and it works for everybody. So as far as bringing the partners on board, the racers obviously are big stakeholders in that. The administration and the tracks, we're big stakeholders in it as well. And I think it's in everybody's interest to try and make it work as best as possible.
Do you think there's enough being done to promote the sport at the present moment?
I think so. It's baby steps at the moment. What we really need to do is build the product, and I think we are certainly getting to the point where we're building the product. Once we build the product, we can start looking at mainstream media advertising. For example, or mainstream media, I should say. For example, we have been getting a little bit of press in Daily Telegraph in Sydney over the last little while. Every time we're coming up to major events, we've built enough of a rapport up with them now that they understand that this is actually quite a sizable event. And what you do by doing that is you start building the profile of these guys. They don't become racers sitting in a race car anymore. They become people. They've got personality, and you start building the cult of hero and the cult of celebrity, and that's what it's all about.
Darren, you're laughing. Do you think as yourself, you've got a hero status among some? I know it's tough to talk about yourself like this, but the truth remains that you are a role model to someone out there. You are what they aspire to be like or to be.
I was looking at Victor when I was laughing.
Yeah, we all have that reaction sometimes.
You're my hero.
But there is someone that's possibly starting out. Maybe it's a first-year apprentice. It's got a mechanical apprenticeship on the go, and maybe this is something that they want to do.
I've done at-risk youth programs, that, and teach kids at school at the TAFE that we do. And all those guys, I tell them, like, I'm a fitter and turner and a mechanic, and we're doing it this level. So to do it take a streetcar out and go and see these guys and give them $20 and bring a helmet, they can race. It's simple stuff. Like, drag racing is the easiest sport in the world to get into. And if you do the right thing, you can do whatever you want. Like, I always tell people to reach for the stars. The young lady that was here singing on another program, she's reaching for the stars, trying to be the best she can be. I want everybody in Australia to be like that. And that's why I go back and teach at TAFE, because those kids just need a little bit of direction and maybe a little bit of a thought process. They can be a Victor Bray or a Darren Morgan or a Phil Lamartina or any of those people that are out there, because we haven't got a magic wand or a great big pool of money or any of those things. We just had a desire to go drag racing, so go and do it.
Now, getting back to the 400 Thunder Series, there are other codes like Super League, World Series, 2020 cricket, these new and exciting focused, short, sharp shows that are out there. Is there anything like that in drag racing that's either happening at the moment or that's on the cards for the near future?
Look, I think the all-run format is the start of that. Obviously, you want to make the show as short and sharp as possible. And, if you do it right, you can have the whole thing run and done in probably 6.5 hours to 7 hours. And you don't want to go any longer than that. You go any longer than that, you start losing people. They lose interest. You don't have necessarily the amount of time that you used to have back in the 90s or the early 2000s. So I think that the all-run format is the first big step towards that. But I think a lot of those other sports that you mentioned are probably starting to realise now that once you get it out there and you get over that initial excitement of it all, you then need to keep maintaining it, and that's not necessarily the easiest thing in the world. So you need to make sure that your product is sustainable over a long term.
Rusty, talking about the 400 Thunder Series, tell us a little bit about what you may or may not know about possible new categories and new venues, because we love to see the series going to new places.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, new categories, for example, at the Gulf Western Oil Nitro Thunder, we ran Pro Extreme, one of the first times that we've run Pro Extreme, and we got a really good response from that. You know, we had one of the cars that at one stage was the fastest door car in the world, had run over 270 miles per hour with Paul Mahayat. You know, that was a really popular category because it gives the guys who have got quick turbo cars, quick nitrous cars and naturally aspirated cars somewhere to go and race. You know, it doesn't necessarily fit into Pro Slammer with these guys, but it gives them somewhere to race. And I think that's a big step forward is taking drag racing into the new era. Because drag racing to a certain extent has always been about superchargers and black belts and very traditional. And I think what we need to do is really start appealing to the younger audiences and trying to give them something to sink their teeth into. And as we know, turbo cars are super popular at the moment, and you know that'd be a great step forward.
Especially here on the East Coast, you've got such a great tuner and modifier culture.
Yeah,
it's absolutely incredible. New venues, we got anything on the cards?
Well, there's always discussions going on in the background. I'm not privy to any of them, but I imagine that there is plenty going on. You know, I'm just the commentator. I get to call whatever racing comes out in front of me, and you know, I love racing. It doesn't matter where we're racing. I love going racing, and you know, I'm looking forward to the Winter Nationals. That's for sure. It's not too far away.
Oh, Rusty Gregory from Sydney Dragway, thank you so much for your time. Victor Bray, it's been incredible having you on, as to Darren Morgan.
Thanks, buddy.
My name's Jared McLean. We'd like to thank you for tuning in for Sports BC Drag Racing. And this is us from Dalton House in Sydney. We'll catch you soon. Here in the pits with Caitlin Morgan. Caitlin, by your own admission, you have a lot of responsibility, not just helping Mum out with the catering and making sure the sponsors are happy here at events like the Gulf Western Oil Nitro Thunder, but handling merchandise, and you're also big with the social media for the AEG Power Tools team. What's involved in a general day for you at an event such as this?
Well, basically we get up, I follow the team around, take as many photos and capture and kind of get everyone involved to see what really goes on behind the scenes at DMR. We want them to see as much as we see, and so basically from start to finish I'll be following the team around. When we're out on the line, I have my phone out, I'll be live streaming, taking photos, and then the tow car, the same sort of thing. And then once the meeting's over, I'll go back, collect all of that, do our press releases and send it out.
Here with Top Fuel pilot Darren Morgan from the AEG Power Tools team, and you've got a new to you car out of the US. How has the development curve matched up to your expectations?
Yeah, well, last year the car was a bit punishable on tyres, and we know we had to step it up this season, so we brought this one in. If we're going to keep continuing with the sport, I guess we had to lift the bar a little bit. So that's caused a bit of a storm around the joint. But yeah, the car's really well. We've still got some little teething problems, so we haven't been able to stand all over it yet. But we're getting closer and closer and enjoying the ride.